Every time DICE seemed to hit their stride while working on Battlefront 2, the game seemed to be taken in a different direction. From heroes to seasons, game modes, maps, offline content, reinforcements to capital shit. Every time a new and different mechanic and such was added, it never seemed to be taken to quite a level complete enough to really embed it into the experience itself. So much saw its way into the game, ideas, philosophy, cosmetic and artistic styles and so on. They were executed so well in very specific sections of the game and then just stayed there. The game is now a mashup of these many different elements, a true sandbox if you will, that lets you jump around from idea to idea to idea without lingering with them too much. With that, it has many different ideas that were waiting to be reiterated upon, but never were. Whether this is a good or bad thing, I generally cannot decide, but I wanted to go over a timeline of the game and point out the many examples of this I can remember. Let's remind ourselves of the many unique aspects that came about and reflect on the game we would have had some of these ideas stuck around. The season had so many new aspects that were unique and cool and what we as the community thought the seasons were going to be like. Firstly, the new heroes. This is one aspect we all thought was going to be a standard feature of the really big content drops. After all, it makes sense. Heroes are extensively the most popular aspect of the Battlefront games, and a constant hero drops was and still is the biggest expectation of any of the Battlefront games. The previous Battlefront 2015 by DICE delivered on this concept, having 2 heroes drop each DLC pack release, and later on during the revitalization of this game, Battlefront II, when the Clone Wars era was brought about. However, a steady stream never came and big content drops were no guarantee of heroes, leaving the unique hero hype feeling behind mostly when it came to this game. Secondly, the event, factions, challenges, and rewards. This is my most missed feature. What a way to rally a community around a game for a length of time, encouraging some friendly rivalry among the community, providing unique challenges that require the community, and finally rewarding the entire community with prizes that only slightly differ depending on which side you are on. Having these events among different themes was such an amazing concept, and seeing the creative suggestions the community had for future ones really puts it into perspective of what this game could have been. It also really encouraged engagement outside the actual game, which was great because it created this unique positive atmosphere outside the game where you could still interact with the game. Also, having a definitive beginning, middle, and end really hammered home that fun, festive, event type feeling within the entire community that could only be achieved in an interactive experience such as that. Lastly, Crait itself. The map was gorgeous, unique in its layout, which made it as snipe as heaven, and pushed map design philosophies so soon after the game was launched. Speed is crashing down instantly since it didn't cost anything, artillery firing at ties in the sky, and straight line trenches being rushed, and the tiniest of pockets of cover being used atop the battlefield. All these fresh and exciting additions in the first phase alone had me really excited for any new additions to GA DICE had planned to bring along. The huge capture point in the middle with various natural and artificial forms of cover was also a unique addition that forced closer matches initially. Then the pylon targets mixed with the doors clothing tied to enemy tickets mechanic helped create one of the best last phases within the entire game mode. Just a wonderful overall map that really pushed the philosophies of how maps were designed for this game mode straight out the gate, and we would never see it until Genosis came along. There was only one limited time game mode, Jetpack Cargo. Man, this mode was ever some fun. It could be highly tactical, using different weapons for different scenarios, memorizing the best route to take with your improved momentum, and the different formations you could attack in with your squad mates. Or it could just be a spam fest of rocket jumps and rocket spam. Great either way. However, this isn't about Jetpack Cargo itself, but rather modes introduced for limited periods of time. I believe Jetpack Cargo came back more than once before disappearing into the ether when it was promised to make regular returns. Ewok Hunt was initially, at the very beginning, meant to be a limited time hunt mode, but stuck around permanently. I guess it was because of the new Ewok character models, mechanics, and the reused map from 2015, which would only be found in this mode. Limited time modes provided a fun change of pace to the game in a substantial way and had the potential to inspire some more risky ideas due to the mostly inconsequential nature of the additions. In the end, we did get something similar with limited time events that changed some of the parameters within certain modes, no doubt inspired by the idea of these modes themselves, but we ultimately never got the same experimental modes again. In the early days, it seemed like limited time modes would be more of a thing, so much so that players thought Extraction coming with the solar season might be a limited time mode when it was released. Speaking of Extraction, Smaller game modes added before the monster that would be capital supremacy was added would be straight up pushed to the side after 1 or 2 updates to themselves. Extraction was highly requested and extremely popular at launch. It was so popular in fact that when Dennis made his announcement about the Clone Wars coming back, the South African servers were finally populated again on the bigger game modes and Extraction, just proving its popularity never really faded. However, it never expanded beyond its 2 maps and was left to merge with Strike, one of the least popular game modes, and thus sealed its fate along with so many aspects of this game. Hero Starfighter also suffered a similar fate. Although it was never merged with Starfighter Assault, I wouldn't be surprised if people forgot about it, despite it receiving some updates itself. Hero Showdown was the sole recipient of continued support in the smaller game sphere, no doubt in part to it being very similar to Heroes vs Villains. And I might add, as well as it being discussed by others, support given to a mode incentivizes players to play that mode, and thus Hero Showdown was the only smaller game mode that never really suffered. Although all the support it got technically was also added to HVV, so it had no unique support of its own. Released at the height of the resurgence, the Genosis map for Galactic Assault was truly one of the most creative additions this game has ever received. Flipping the GA formula on its head, this was the first and last map to funnel players out of a tight first phase into bigger second and third phases, as opposed to the reverse in all other GA matches. The map also came with unique mechanics brought upon by the additions of ATTEs. They were the free moving key to the entire match. They weakened the droid dropships, captured the last zone, and they were the tickets for the clones, and subsequently were the only items that were dropped onto the battlefront mid-action in any mode. With them being tickets, they were the droids' targets, allowing the droids to freely focus which ones should be targeted first, giving a sense of more freedom and pushing the clones back. The map design also encouraged moving all over the place, creating opportunities for speeders, tanks, snipers, and sharpshooters alike. It was truly and is truly a map like we had never seen before, and unfortunately would never see again. The maps added after Genosis would not make their way to GA, as DICE moved on from that as well. All subsequent maps, except for the capital ships, never sparked that level of creativity and additional design philosophies again. Felucia, Eisenclass, and the rest were all pretty standard maps with a little bit of unique design touches like some verticality or clever flanking paths. But they never lived up to the fresh new feeling and an epic scale that Tripper Hive brought. The last item on this list is going to be different from the rest. The idea of completing an era, that is making sure certain aspects are represented across the prequel, original, and sequel maps in the game, may seem arbitrary at first, but really actually isn't. See, it actually does stem from the decisions DICE initially made themselves. Decisions in terms of content they came pretty close to fulfilling before being forced to rush out certain developments, because support ceasing was looming over the horizon. Firstly, we have reinforcements. Much like Capital Supremacy, the Infiltrator class was initially only made for the Clone Wars era. There was no obligation to introduce new characters on the battlefront to other eras, although there were some requests. However, it was nothing too loud, though DICE would eventually add these additions to this class when introducing Capital Supremacy to the sequel era. At this point, they had already added extra reinforcements to the prequels via the Droidicas and Clone Commandos as enforcers alongside the original forces, and so when they added Infiltrators to the sequels, they also managed to add or remake other reinforcements for the First Order and Resistance. All of these additions, I believe, were some of the best additions to the game, with the same spark of creativity as I described pertaining to the GA Genosis map earlier. Come time for the announced original trilogy update, and then suddenly, Kaptagi, no more extra reinforcements would be coming. The original trilogy would only have the new Infiltrators and no replacements for the Wookiees already found in the prequel era. On top of that, some found the Ewok and ISB underwhelming, an opinion I don't necessarily share. And then the rushed moving on from the sequel updates clouded some of the sentiment of the update as a whole before it even came out. Secondly, was the capital ships from Supremacy. Despite being a crucial part of giving Supremacy that tug and pull feeling and differentiating itself from other conquest modes, the OT update would never receive the most iconic capital ships in all of Star Wars. Bummer for obvious reasons, but it also left Supremacy incomplete as the prequels and sequels have their capital ships present. DICE themselves chose to extend the mode to all eras, but did not manage to bring the complete experience to any of them. That's right, in the absence of flagships in the OT, starfighters were brought in to fill the void. Only on the thematically appropriate maps though, no Scarif or Death Star, obviously. This in turn just means that some supremacy matches are missing some kind of ship either way. And I can say this, the mode is not complete enough without them to really make do, except for the maps where starfighters or capital ships wouldn't make sense, like the Death Star and, well, only the Death Star to be honest. Maybe the farming village on Felucia shouldn't have air raids, well, I don't know. Lastly is the weapons. Requested from launch, these finally made their way into the game during the original trilogy update, and thus it made sense that they would be firmly rooted in the era. Also that because 2015's Battlefront all had these models already. More weapons though were never added. Not as a big deal as you can use those weapons across all eras, however with Star Wars having some of the most interesting, unique and popular weapons across all eras, it would have been nice if they released more frequently, as they are the third most requested thing in any Battlefront game that has come out, is out, or will ever come out, behind heroes and locations. When they are released, it would be amazing if all eras were represented to really add some variety, and I have a feeling DICE really wanted to, but the soon support stoppage was just too close, and thus that was the best they could do. Battlefront's base gameplay and design have always been more than good enough to withstand these bizarre dropping of ideas and their implementations. The game was never going to suffer without the additions, however it is still disappointing to see such masterful works never live up to their full potential once they were put inside the game, especially with their polished examples being fully playable and enjoyable in certain moments in this game. Potential is a word you can really drag out when relating to this game. Trust me, many people do, so I understand the wariness to do so. But also, it is really likely that an enjoyable aspect of this game, maybe one you particularly enjoyed, was never fully fleshed out, and that's a shame. Maybe one day, when there is a Battlefront again, please, more attention can be paid to fully incorporating great ideas into it and leaving us, the player base, with a truly satisfying and deeply rewarding experience.